everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's card is super exciting for me. It's inspired by one of my favourite childhood toys. Now this was originally for an Instagram hop that I'm a part of every month, so it's over on Instagram if you want to go have a look and go see all the other hop participants. The theme this month for that hop was 3-dimensional cards. But I document all my work with videos, so I thought I'd share the video on how I made it. Plus, I thought I might sneak it into the latest Lawn Fawn challenge because it's the last day to enter that. Ticking all the boxes with just one card. As you can probably see, this card is Polly Pocket themed. It was one of my favourite toys as a kid. Well, many of them were my favourite toys as a kid. I have quite the collection of them. So let me show you how I made this fun interactive card. There's quite a few dies from a few different sets. So from my pivot pop-up set, I used the trees. I used my road border die. I used that stitch oval from the mini pop-up box. I'm using the largest of my stitched hearts, my Coaster Critters stamp set, my car critters, my tiny friends, and my new quilted backdrop die. Not gonna lie, the main reason I got this die and was so happy that I found it for 40% off at Scrap Dragon was because my favourite Polly Pocket from when I was little had a quilted detail on the top of it. It was all bumpy and raised and it was just really cute. There was something about it that looked like a blanket. And so this die just worked perfectly for that. I'm going to start off by stamping all of my images. Now the idea behind this little Polly Pocket is that the bottom scene is going to be a car driving on a road through some trees. Maybe they're on a little road trip. Maybe they're on their way to what's happening in the top scene, which is like a little theme park. There's a roller coaster, a ticket booth, a little games booth, and a little cart to ride on. This reminded me of some of the other Polly Pockets that I had, which would be like the little house upstairs and the garden down in the front. I don't know, it's not really upstairs, is it? Just the top part. I loved these toys so much. I just think they're so clever and they were so much fun. And I would love to know in the comments, were Polly Pockets something that you played with too? You can probably tell my age. I was around for the original Polly Pockets. I was also around when Mattel bought the company, or the brand, and changed them to those big dolls with like the really weird stretchy rubbery clothes. I loved them too, but my favourites will always be the little compacts. I have so many of them at my mum's. Next time she does a big clean out of the shed, I'll make sure that I go through the box and post all of them on Instagram. I don't know if I will ever be able to let my kids play with them. I love them so much, and I'm sure my kids will be gentle enough with them. They're just so precious. And all of mine are still intact except for the very first one that I got when I was about 3. I know the little tree has snapped off, but I still have the tree, and a lot of their little tiny faces have worn off. I guess that's just something that happened over time playing with them. But other than that, they're in pretty much perfect condition. I have zero intention of ever getting rid of them or ever selling them. I've seen on eBay how much some of them go for. And there's one or two there that I look at and think that I really wish that I could have had as a kid and think maybe now that I'm a grown up I can get them. But I still can't justify the amount of money. I'm going to need to do a lot more videos if I want to be spending my money on Polly Pockets at 30. So I'm just colouring in with my Copics today. There's probably going to be a couple of little alcohol markers here too where I use grey. But I'm keeping my colouring really simple, and that's mostly because these images are really small and there's not really a huge need to go into too much detail. Before I added my white details, I went back to the car and I cut out the window. I'm pretty sure you can do this with the dies. I'm not sure. I don't have the matching dies for this one. I'm not sure if you can cut the window out or not, but I just did this with my craft knife. It only took a minute. I'm doing this because I want my little characters to sit in the car, and they're going to be removable characters, so I can't stamp them on. I'm now going to add my white highlights to all of my little images. I cut out all those little pieces and look at how cute they are. I do add another little booth. I do have one for tickets here, but I make one for games a little bit later. I don't show that because I colour it in pretty much exactly the same, just in a different colour. So here are all the die cut pieces that I'm using. I cut them out in advance because this card isn't too complicated, but it was the first time that I had thought about it. So it was taking me a little bit of time to get my head around each of the stages. So I thought it would be handy just to cut everything out in one go so that I could slowly piece it together as I went along and didn't need to keep jumping back and forth between my dies and my die cut machine. But you'll see, it all comes together really smoothly. So I'm using my foam blending tool today. This tool and I are becoming friends again. I think I have learned not to be too heavy-handed with this one, and I'm not destroying my paper so much. But I've got a nice thick white cardstock today, and the pieces that I'm decorating now, they're the inside, kind of the background of each piece of the heart. I kind of tried to go for 90s toy colours for these. I remember a fair amount of pastels, but also a lot of bold colours too. I figured you can't go wrong with like green, pink and purple. I would say a lot of my Polly Pockets were this colour. If you were a fan of the toys and had a fair amount, if you remember the church was pretty much these colours. So there we have it, the top piece and the bottom. To make the little, I don't know how to put this, it's just a little piece that goes on front of the Polly Pockets. It used to have the Polly Pocket brand name and font on the front, and it used to have like shiny gold paint on it. So I'm using a piece of yellow cardstock with some shiny gold embossing powder, and that's what I'm going to be sticking on the front. I'm going to add a little bit more texture and colour to these backgrounds because they were looking a little bit plain. There's just something about Distress Oxide inks when they're on their own with nothing done to them. They just have that real chalky, dull look. So I wanted to make it a bit more fun, a bit more sparkly. This is meant to look like a 90s toy, so there's going to be glitter. So here I am just sticking my road pieces together. I've cut a piece of dark grey and a piece of white, and I'm just going to layer them. This is so all the lines on the road are white and they're not green like the grass that's going to be underneath. I also stick my little trees together while I'm here. For the top heart, I cut a stitched heart and I then went over that heart with the quilted backdrop so that it was a quilted stitched heart and I'm layering it over a plain stitched heart so that it fills in that pattern. And there we have it, top and bottom. It's now time to start sticking down all these pieces. For the little roller coaster cart, I cut out a piece of white cardstock in the same shape so that I could layer it, and I'm using some foam squares between these two layers. This is because I wanted it to be like a little pocket, a pocket within a Polly Pocket, so that my little character can sit inside the roller coaster cart. As you can see, she fits nicely in there. I'm just adding some foam squares to the back of my other little booth. This is the one I did off camera, and I'm sticking it down. I'm also going to be adhering that roller coaster cart now that the pieces are together. There are a lot of foam squares in this card. I'm also using some for the other little ticket booth so that I can fit a Polly Pocket in there too. And I'm making sure I leave a gap under the bench so that her legs or his legs can sit in there when I'm playing with it. Once that has been stuck down, I'm then going to start adhering the pieces on the bottom heart. So I'm sticking down my road, which I've cut not only with the road die but also with the stitched heart as well, so that that stitching detail is around the edges. It's the little things like that that make this look really neat. I'm also going to be sticking down my trees because they're going to be flat as well. I had enough dimension at the top and with the car down the bottom that I thought these would look okay flat. So for my car, I also needed this to be a little pocket for them to sit in. So I stamped the car in some jellyfish ink just so that I could get the outline of it. I cut that out. I cut the mirrors too because I didn't need them. And that way I could stick this on the back of the car, again with some double-sided foam squares so that it's got a bit of dimension and now my characters can slip in there. Now I'm using some magnetic sheets, and this is leftovers and offcuts from when I'm making my stamp and die storage. So I always have these little strips left over and I'm really never sure what to do with them. So I'm glad I had them for this. I'm going to be putting a little bit of this magnetic strip on the back of the car, just a little bit behind the grass on the bottom scene. I'm putting a little bit up behind the roller coaster so that it will be behind the cart. I'm putting a little bit behind the ticket booth as well. And as you can see here, I've cut out my little Polly Pocket and I've stuck some magnetic strip on the back of them too. This is so that they will stick nicely in the card and there's less chance of losing them. In a real Polly Pocket, you'd obviously have those little holes where their little feet plug into perfectly, but I didn't know how to make an equivalent of that for this. So the magnet sheets worked out really well. This was probably the trickiest part of the card for me, was working out how to do a bit of a hinge. I just used some matching cardstock to what's going to be colour of the front of this card with the quilted heart. It's not perfect, and I think if I were to do it again I might think of a different way to do this. It just looked a little bit bulky, but there's also not a lot of space to connect two pieces of the heart together without it being really thin. And I really wanted this to be stable because it is quite bulky, it's a bit chunky, it's a bit heavy with those magnetic pieces. So I really wanted something that was going to stick well and hold everything together. So here I am just gluing that on both. So these two hearts are now connected together. Once that was done, I could then stick my quilted heart on top. As you can see, I cut out a few different designs. I was really playing around with what worked best. And in the end, I went with my original idea, which was just the stitched heart with the quilted backdrop on top. So here I am just measuring out some kids adhesive craft foam. This card does already have a lot of dimension, but to stick these hearts on top, it just kind of looked a little bit flat. And although Polly Pockets are meant to be like this cute little compact toy, they're actually quite chunky because there's a lot going on in those little toys. So the addition of this foam just gave it a little bit more dimension. It made it feel better to hold. I don't know if that makes sense. It just had a better feel to it. The foam is light, so it didn't add too much weight to it. It just made it all look a little bit better. So here I am adding some double-sided tape to that, and then all of this is going to stick down and be the first thing you see when you look at the card. While I was here, I used some double-sided foam squares, again, to stick down my little happy symbol that's going on the front. And there we go, it's looking more and more like a Polly Pocket. For my background, I'm going to round the edges of some white cardstock. I decided to go with a square card for this. I felt like a rectangle looked a little bit funny. And then as you can see here, I actually had already made the background, but didn't think ahead and I made it the same colour as the grass. And that looked a little bit silly because then everything was blending together, and that's really not what I wanted. So I went for the purple instead. And I'm glad I did because I feel like it worked really well. Now, I don't know if you can tell by the occasional shadow of my camera hanging over my shoulder, but I was filming a lot of this at night, and at night is when I get the weirdest ideas. It's late, the house is quiet, I can finally think, and so I thought the challenge that I'm doing over on Instagram is meant to be 3D. It's already kind of a 3D card, but it's also just kind of a card that you open. I wanted it to be a little bit more different because I don't make anything easy for myself. And so I thought, well, why not make a little piece that pulls out and props up the top so that you can play with it? So that it's not open and flat on your table, it can actually sit up and act much more like a Polly Pocket. So here I am measuring out that piece. This is going to stick at the back, and it kind of works, I guess, similar to one of Lawn Fawn's. It's one of the pull tab pop-up dies. I can't remember the exact name. I don't own that one, but it's the one that worked perfectly with the toaster a little while back. So that's kind of where I got the idea for the shape of this one. So I'm going to ink it up so that it matches the background because I actually don't want it to stand out very much. I want it to just be this hidden piece that makes it more functional, not so much draw attention to this. At first I did cut out kind of a star shape at the top, but I was really unhappy with that. So I decided to go through my dies and I found kind of like a pull tab piece that belonged to the Flippin' Awesome set, and that worked a little bit better. Although I did originally do it in green, and I didn't like that. I changed it to purple so that the whole thing was purple and it just didn't stand out too much. Before I get too serious and start gluing everything down, I needed to make sure I had my double-sided tape ready on the back of this card front so that it was ready to stick down on the card. I didn't want to be flipping this over and pushing tape down when all my 3D pieces were already on the front of this. I didn't want anything getting squished, so it's just best to get it done now. Here I am just doing the last step for the back of this. I'm using some more Kids Adhesive craft foam, and I'm just sticking some of this on either side so that my card has the dimension it needs and a pocket. The word of the day is pocket, I think. This gives it just enough room so it can slide freely without being squashed. I'm going to do this on both sides, and then I'm going to stick just a little thin strip of cardstock over that magnet that you can see at the back. And that is so that this moving piece doesn't snag on that because it is just thick enough to get caught. And I really don't want anything happening to this moving piece because it's all about to be sealed up and then I'm going to have no access to it. Time to glue this all down to my card front. So now I'm just carefully removing the backing to that double-sided tape, being sure to not press down too hard because of all those layers. And here I am adhering it to my card base. Oh my gosh, it's done. I really love this card. It is so much fun. I love how interactive it is. I'd love to know what you think of it too. And don't forget to share this card with someone who loved Polly Pockets. Maybe they'll love this too. I just hope they don't ask you to make it for them because it is a bit tedious. But it was so worth it in the end. And here it is, all set up, ready to play. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be back again very soon with some more crafty tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!